My name is Pedro Noguera. I live in Los Angeles now. I serve as the Dean of the Rossier School of Education at USC. I'm a sociologist and I study inequality and the way it affects education.
My name's Fidel Rodriguez. I've been working with young people and young adults have been labeled at-risk, high-risk youth, creating leadership programs and rites of passage programs for them to develop themselves as good human beings.
Racial equity means that regardless of your background, regardless of where you live, you have the opportunity to live a good, healthy, fulfilling life. That where you have access to the things you need, whether it be a good education, clean water, or a good job. When those things are accessible, we can say we've achieved racial equity.
Racial equity to me, it means truth. It means healing. It means reparations. It means giving land back. And most importantly, at the foundation of it, it will mean dignity. That's what racial equity means to me.
Well, the manifestations of racial injustice are really obvious in Los Angeles. You see it on the streets in the large homeless population. We have more homeless people than any other city in the country, and a disproportionate number of those people are Black. And I would add a disproportionate number are also mentally ill and substance abusers, which raised the question, why would you allow people in that condition to live on your streets? And why isn't there a more compassionate approach to address this problem? But that's just the tip of the iceberg.
The biggest manifestations of racial inequity in LA, it's poverty. You know, go down to Wall Street in downtown LA and look at who is homeless. As you're walking down your street in your neighborhood and you see the gardeners and the landscapers, who is that? It's right in front of us. But I think we are almost like in a cultural psychosis, right? If you've gone to a therapist in your life or a social worker, that person is gonna wanna get a case study of you. They need to know where you've been, what you've been through in order to get an assessment of how to deal with whatever ailment you're dealing with. The United States needs a therapy session, and we've never had one. And we cannot heal our society and come to any conclusion to understand the root causes of that until we deal with the past.
So when the federal government became involved in supporting housing for Americans, and I should add here, white Americans, it left people of color, particularly Black people, out, and Asians. White Mexicans got treated better than dark Mexicans, and that it's important to realize that as well.
We had a red area on a map that basically said, you know, this was a place that you didn't want to invest in, this was a place that you didn't want to give any type of loans to, or even bring any type of, you know, healthcare services or food services. And lo and behold, who was in these places? They were what they called at the time Negroes, immigrants, classes, poor whites. Redlining is nothing more than a byproduct of the original racism that has kind of put in a certain group of people at the top of the racial ladder and a certain group at the bottom. And unfortunately, we still see it lingering today. Now it's kind of manifested itself into gentrification. When you live in a poor neighborhood, you're living in an area where you have poor schools. And when you have poor schools, you have poor teachers. When you have poor teachers, you get a poor education. When you get a poor education, you can only work in a poor paying job. And that poor paying job enables you to live again in a poor neighborhood. So it is a very vicious cycle. Malcolm X.
I think the thing to keep in mind is that although LA is diverse, it's deeply segregated. So you see the inequities. It shows up in the quality of life. It shows up in the quality of housing. It shows up in the schools, in every aspect. It shows up in the air quality. It has some of the wealthiest people in the world choose to live in LA because of our beautiful weather, but it's also home to some of the poorest people in the United States. And they live not that far from each other. They're the ones watching their children, cutting their grass. They're actually dependent on poor people. And that, I think, creates the illusion that at least for the wealthy, that things in LA are perfectly fine.
LA is so unique because one, it's got a lot of issues. It's got a lot of issues, but more importantly, it's got such a diverse group of ethnic groups. It's got a long history of justice, right? It's got a long organizing history. I think there's so many progressive academics and organizers in LA. It's always like the epicenter for change, right? There's a lot of consciousness here. It's a rough place to live. LA is definitely a hard place to live, but I think the beauty is in the humanity of people that reside in LA.
As an educator, I've had the privilege of working with young people throughout my career. I sense in them a willingness to confront the problems that the previous generation has passed on to them. I sense creativity and a commitment to problem solving, and I think that if we can equip them with some good critical thinking skills, that they're going to be able to hopefully do a better job at solving the problems of previous generations.
Mentors and teachers, I mean, they are highly significant, and you only need one caring adult, they say, to really affect a young person's life. And I, by the grace of God, I had two. How did I get introduced to those mentors? I got in trouble. I had a really significant mentor came into my life. His name was Bill Jackson. He was the principal of my high school. I got caught for stealing a VCR at my high school at 18 years old, me and two of my friends, and we were stealing it to go buy some drugs. And so Bill Jackson, over the years, 19, 20, 21, I was selling drugs, I was getting in a lot of trouble. My mom was worried about me, and he just never stopped checking in on me. And then eventually at 22, I got arrested for 3 felony batteries. Should have went to prison, but by the grace of God, I didn't. And Bill Jackson was still there, and he began to kind of mentor me and talk to me about education. What is inspiring to me right now? It's the amount of people I see getting reconnected to their indigenous practices. Seeing Mexicans and Africans and Native Americans getting reconnected to their indigenous traditions. When people were disconnected from their cultural roots, that is when a lot of depression and trauma happened. And so what I'm seeing right now is people reconnecting with their ancestral cultural knowledge, which is giving them hope, which is healing them. So to me, that is an amazing thing to be able to witness and know that things are changing and people getting reconnected and truly manifesting the concept of decolonizing the mind.
I really do believe that education is the path to a more equitable future for all of us.
We all have to step up. We have to heal, and we have to heal together.